All right. So the intention, you all can see my shared screen, yes? Great. So this is where my slides are, but you are over here for me, so I apologize if I'm looking to the side. I swear I am actually looking at you when I'm over here, but the intention of this is to give you an introduction to Flint, specifically within the context of our uses of AI so far. So I'm going to jump right in. And some of the beginning slides are a little more in philosophical nature. And then I'm going to probably spend no more than 10 minutes on that. And then we'll get into some hands-on usage that any of us can use regardless of whether we have kids right now or not. So what we've done, where we're going, practical applications, and that's when we're going to dig in hands-on. And some preliminary best practices. And then I want to leave a good solid 15 minutes if possible for any questions you might have as we go along. But like I said, if you have questions as we go through, let me know. Happy to answer those. So overall, philosophically, AI doesn't replace our creativity. It empowers it. It helps us become better questioners. It helps us become better prompt writers as educators and subsequently as students as well. More often than not, what I'm seeing with AI and its ability to improve our thinking strategies, it is helping in the area of being able to ask questions and to be posed questions that we might not always get a chance to do or receive. Whether we're talking about being a teacher and writing a prompt, and then when we are writing it, discovering that the result we're getting isn't quite what we expected. So therefore we have to become better prompt writers in order to, so writing a better question, if you will. And then similarly, I'm seeing with students, if the prompt is well written, then the students in their interaction with the bot or the AI will learn that they need to also ask better questions or to provide more thoughtful responses. So that's where we see this empowerment of creativity. So this is a lot of text that I will trust that you can share or that you can read later. But essentially, one of the guiding philosophies in educational technology and education as a whole stems from this TPACK model. And it's simply a method by which we can look at our work and our knowledge base as educators, and this intersection between our content knowledge, our pedagogical knowledge, how well do we know the students and the developmental stage that our students are at biologically, and then technical knowledge. And of course, this sweet spot is this unicorn right in the center, where we have this wealth of knowledge, but are we being sensitive to the developmental age of our students? And do we have enough technical know-how to help our students make appropriate choices, but then also making sure that the technology that we're using makes sense for the content that we're trying to deliver. So form-fitting the function. And ultimately, this boils down to, are we using the right tool for the job at hand? And that's what our hope is, right? We started with some awareness, skill acquisition. Now for us, we've been using Flint as the platform, as the method by which we are upskilling, so to speak. And looking at strategy, making sure that we have this pilot group, that we're being thoughtful about the choices that we're making. And when I say, and then implementation, making choices about the implementation of AI in areas that it makes sense, providing support when and where it makes sense. And with this end goal of preparing our students for the world in which they're going to go into. And the world that they live in and they are going into is very heavily reliant on AI. And 10, 15 years ago, there were chat bots. There were these little help bots that would always be, and they still are, in the bottom right-hand corner of every website you would go to. And whether we knew it or not, those were AI-driven bots then, and now it is significantly more pervasive. So that's why it's more of a necessity beyond just computer science majors, for our kids to be able to not just assess the validity of arguments, but in fact, develop those arguments alongside these bots or AI or whatever direction they're going to go into, to have it be something that they are minimally aware of and can be cautiously cautious consumers of. Full integration, when I mean that, it's truly just for identified purposes. Integration in the sense of, do we feel comfortable in its use? Do we feel comfortable being able to negotiate and manage around whatever AI exists for our students as it grows? And then, sorry, the slide got funky there, but continual improvement and future monitoring. So specifically, where is Flint within the AI ecosphere? So the top two kind of paragraph sections are generally speaking about AI. Flint, as well as almost every other educational AI tool out there, simply takes what is in OpenAI, ChatGPT, adds additional layers and filters for safety and security and various other qualifiers to put on some student privacy guardrails, so that then teachers and students can use it with some level of assurance of reliability. And reliability from the standpoint of by knowing that this is designed for students and teachers. If a student goes sideways and starts talking about something that in normal conversation we might necessarily flag, we might reach out to a counselor. Almost all of these school-based AI programs also have ways of flagging this kind of information, where in OpenAI, if a student just went on to ChatGPT, that would not exist. That doesn't exist. So that's just one example. But then in addition to that, where in ChatGPT, it uses the information that comes into it to teach itself. For many of these educational focused AI programs, it will do data weighting and data scrubbing. And data weighting is where it will wait a given amount of time before it even accepts information in from OpenAI, which ChatGPT's is much, much smaller of a waiting period, so to speak. And data scrubbing is going through it and really kind of doing an academic filter on it to a certain extent. We always get into bias issues and also some issues of oh gosh, the word is escaping me. When you think you see things that aren't really there. Anybody?
Hallucinating.
Hallucinations. Thank you. So hallucinations are another thing that a lot of people have talked about, but hallucinations don't happen. I don't want to say anything doesn't happen at all in these educational programs, but it happens significantly less because there are more guardrails. Flint is for student learning foremost versus a focus on teacher efficiencies. So next week's Lunch and Learn is on School AI, which is a different AI education focused program that initially kind of focused on teacher efficiencies, but now also has a strong student facing piece as well. But Flint from the very beginning has been focused on teachers helping develop what will ultimately be student facing and what is student facing interactions with the AI. So we have this continued pilot with Flint this year. We are continuing to look at useful practices for Flint. We are not married to Flint, so to speak. They have been really great in terms of support. They've been really flexible with questions we have, and when we have issues, getting back to us really, really quickly. That being said, they are completely aware that we are like, we're going to keep looking to see what really is going to be a best fit for us under what conditions and what environments. We're continuing to look at and review legal and ethical issues, emerging competitors, and use cases. So that's where we are. What I would like us to do, if what I'm going to propose is too overwhelming, then by all means, don't do what I say, because I can't see what your computers anyway. So, but what I'd like to suggest is that you have kind of two screens open, if you will. I'm going to jump into Flint. And then if you want to jump into Flint as well by going to harker.flintk12.com, then we can do this together. So the first thing that you would do when you log in, let me go ahead and sign out, is you would click on sign in with Google and use your Harker username or email and password to get in. You will probably not see all of these. You may see some of them. Well, actually, why don't you tell me? Do you see anything? Can you log in though? Excellent. So I think I can see them all, partly because many of them are mine that I created as part of demos. But what I would like to do is walk us through one of your examples of creating a tutor. Now, there are two basic areas of Flint. It's pretty straightforward in this respect. Whenever somebody comes into Flint the first time as a teacher, what I suggest that they do is create some groups. Now, we're in the process of trying to create those groups for all the teachers anyway and each group would be its own class, but those aren't pre-populated yet. So if you were to jump into this tomorrow, I would suggest create a group first. So I have two groups. I have a 4th period group and I have an 8th period group. Those are the two classes that I teach. And you would just click add, create in workspace. And then all it asks you is to name it. That's the only thing you have to put into it. And then the group is there. The reason that can be helpful is because if you don't create a group, then when you create your tutor, which is synonymous with assignment, when you create your tutor, you give that one link to all of your kids. Well, the problem is that all of your kids' responses will be in the same clump, regardless of what group or what period they're in. So that can be kind of a managerial nightmare unless you already have them in particular groups, and then you add them to their individual groups, and then whatever tutors you put into that group then is just for that set of kids. You with me so far?
It kind of reminds me of the Ed puzzle, like assigning to classes. So like it chunks out the who's viewed it, etc.
Yeah, it's very similar in that respect. So now we're going to create a tutor. And yeah, Rachel.
If you create a tutor and you have multiple groups, can you assign like the same tutor to multiple groups, but then it's just chunked out within that group? So I can look at the same tutor for classes 2, 4, 6, but they're grouped within their class. So I can only see like the 20 kids instead of like all 60.
Yes, exactly. So I I want somebody here to give me a tutoring objective. So essentially an assignment. What do you want this particular tutor, this assignment to do? Assuming you are creating something that's going to interact with the kids to help them achieve a goal. My question to you is, what's the goal? It can be anything, any topic. It can be super fun and quirky, or it can be useful. Paul.
To understand the Electoral College. Is
Okay,
that
great. So this is just bare bones, like first time I'm creating a tutor. Now, if I have a document or something that already exists that is some source material, I can attach it here. Or if there's an image, you can imagine if you want kids to say analyze an image or a piece of art or whatever, you could add that here. You could take a photo. You could paste in a link to YouTube, to an article, blog post. When we get into code snippets and math, that's more for computer science and math. But you can also insert that information, like insert some code and have the students find or evaluate what the validity of the code. And same with math or scientific equation.
Liz,
So
question about that. Does it only work with publicly available content for now? Like, for example, if there were a textbook or a book that would otherwise have to be purchased, is there any way for Flint to work on that?
Yeah, so if there's a PDF, right? If there's an external document, like you could pull that. Now, if it's a website that's behind a username and password, then no. But those would be sort of the two ways if it was publicly available or if there was a PDF or a document of that source material.
Thank you.
Grade level, you can choose all sorts of different systems. And then let's do second grade. So we have the Electoral College, which we might expect that older kids would be the ones learning about this, but maybe we want, in this case, it to be second graders that are learning about this. So all of these steps along the left hand, or all of these icons along the left hand side, are the steps that Flint kind of guides, handholds you through. And you can go back and forth between any of them after you go through them once. But after this first pass, you click next, and then it's going to auto-populate the rest of it, and you'll see that happen in a second. But the last thing I want to point out is that this how to write tutoring objectives is really, really helpful. The other thing that we do like about Flint is that they have a lot of ancillary materials for the teachers to be able to kind of increase their own capabilities and feelings of adequacy within the prompt writing process as well. So I'm going to click next. And now I'm not touching anything and it's going through. And the first thing it does is it gives me 3 different options. An Electoral College adventure, where they go on a fun adventure with a friendly guide. Remember, this is second grade. So who explains how it works using a colorful map and simple stories. They do an election day role play, where they participate in a role play where they pretend to be a voter on election day. Or an art class, where they join an art class where they create drawings and visual aids to learn about the Electoral College. So I, as the teacher, then can choose which one of these I want my students to do. So I'm going to choose this one. Yeah. Oh, you want to do 3? Let's do the art class. Awesome. Okay. So now I'm going to click next, and it populates a whole bunch of stuff. Now, one of the things about Flint that I love about it, because it's a gateway drug, in the sense that it builds all of the prompting and all of the nuances of prompt writing directly into its system, where almost none of what it actually does for you is unique. And this, I do want to give this caveat across the board, which is educational AI programs are essentially about how they're packaging the content. No matter which way, which program if you're looking at Magic School, which has terrible privacy policy, or if you've got School AI or you're looking at Flint, it's about how good of a prompt you're writing. So if you write a really detailed prompt, you can get this same content out of any bot. You can't get the privacy guardrails that exist with some of these programs. But what I'm about to show you, like, that's going to be really cool, is really cool because it handholds us through it rather than expects us to know what it can and can't do. So we chose the tutor type, which was that third one. Then it pre-populated what the primary language would be. So you could change the language for language teachers. This is appealing because, well, maybe I want the primary language to be French, or I want it to be Japanese. And so you can change the primary language, and then the student has to interact in that language. There can also be a secondary language where the students can choose whether they're using one language or another. The input methods, so this is good for all grade levels. If you're talking about accommodations, if you're talking about making sure that you're differentiating, you're individualizing the educational experience, giving the students an opportunity to either write or speak their responses. If you are using this as what we so far have pretty much recommended, which is use it for process-based assignments, not necessarily an end product. Don't use it to assign students an entire essay. Use it to help them with the research process, with the what questions should I ask, with the nuances of process, rather than to create an end product. Where we run into a lot of issues when it comes to plagiarism is in fact in that end product creation. So the input method, why not have the students? Now it does do speech to text. So you can assign them to speak only into it, or to write or speak into it, and it will still write down what it is that was said. And same with output method, reading and listening with autoplay, without autoplay, all of these options. And if you say without autoplay, it's just the difference of having this little listen button or not. And same with this one, writing or speaking, you get this choice of a little microphone or not. Now, if at this point you're looking at this and you're like, oh, you know what? I feel like this is a little low of a reading level, of whatever level, you can adjust it and revise it as you go through. Then the tutor behavior, this is also something that is pre-slugged after you choose that third option. How helpful do you want it to be? Give guidance without giving out any answers. I don't want it to be helpful at all. It'll ask me to refresh it if I change any of these elements, which makes sense. But if I don't ever want it to give out any answers or guidance, then I do none. Or if I don't care and I'm like, you know what, have it be as helpful as it possibly can and give it full. I can edit the initial prompt if I want it to. And then these are very specific rules that I can either add to or I can take out. Then there is this grading element. So the auto grading, that's defaulted on, and the grading rubric is defaulted off. The auto grading is just for the teacher's view. The students don't see that. Only if you show the grading rubric to the students do they then see that as well. You can change this grading rubric. It doesn't have to be A, B, C, D, F. It could be, you know, exceeding, approaching, and almost there. It could be, you know, fantastic and pretty great. Like, you could change it however you want. And then you could show the grading rubric based on how you change that. And then last but not least is this assignment business. So the duration, if you want to have it be just a limited amount of time, if you want there to be a deadline, if you want to pause it, so a lot of teachers are using this pausing ability where I want you to work on it in class. We're doing this collectively and collaboratively. And now we're done with this. And so you as the teacher go in and you pause the tutor. Now students can't re-access it. They can't go back in, they can't change any part of it. I like to always allow unsubmission, but I tend to turn off allowing removing. I want to see everything and also make it okay if they, if they feel like they stumbled. Sometimes our students want to just delete it and pretend like it never happened. And I would rather that be an opportunity to work through whatever made them want to remove it, whatever it is. Now I, as the teacher, and this doesn't change anything, can you draw a big rectangle and add some wavy lines for the state? I can say yes. So I can do this on the side. And can you draw some stars on your map? Yes. Yes. Can you add these numbers to your circles? Yes. Now, in my mind, I would like the AI at some point to prompt my kid to show me their drawings. So because I am able to go through this and just say yes to everything they're doing, it doesn't mean that I'm actually doing what it's telling me to do. So I personally would probably go back to the objectives or maybe even to the rules and add a rule that says, ask students to upload a picture of their map at least every 3 questions. And you can be very didactic with it in that way. But once I'm done, and let's pretend for a second that this is how I want it, then I click create. And once I've created it, this is where I can put it into the group. So this is, Rachel, to your earlier question, I can take it and I can put it into this group. I can update. I can also put it into my 8th period, update it. And it will automatically be in that space for all of the students that are in that group. I also have this specific link. This is the link that I share with students. Okay. And that's all I have to do. When I share that link with the students, it's going to ask them to sign in. They sign in with their Harker account. And that's it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, I had to unmute. So sorry, this is annoying because this is like several steps back.
It's fine.
But because I was doing it as you were talking,
Yeah.
and I got 2 tutor types that I'm excited about.
Yes.
How do I choose? And like, if I choose one, what's my ability? I saw where it says
Recourse.
Yeah, like if I want to explore one and then explore the other, what's the
So I would go through this. So you click one and then you demo with one.
okay.
And then you could do one of 2 things. You could either update it and save that one
Yeah.
and then come back to the same one like I just did
Okay.
and then change
And then-
it
Okay.
and regenerate it and then play with that one and save
Okay.
it as a separate one.
And so you just then I'll be able to find them as saved.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry. I wasn't clear enough about that. Or even touched on it. Okay. So once I've done that, what I'm going to do now is take us back briefly to hopefully a very old session that hopefully still has its stuff. Here we go. Okay. So this was a session that I did with my 6th graders last year. And it was asking them, can you explain how a 3D printer works? And when you give that link to the kids and they complete it. On the left-hand side, you have each individual student's session, and these are their auto-assigned grades. If I click on any one of them, then it's going to show me the entire conversation. And it's a very one-sided conversation. You can see the AI is talking a lot and my 6th grader is talking very little on the right-hand side. But over on the right-hand side, it also gives this analytics. And this analytics for the session as a whole is actually it's for just this particular student. And you have a good understanding of how a 3D printer works, et cetera, et cetera. Keep learning and exploring the things they do well, the things that they struggle with. Now, if there was more in here, you would see not just an overall, but there used to be sort of and I think there still is, maybe not just for the student, maybe, yeah. So you did not provide any responses, so therefore you got an F. But this is a general overview of the session. In some cases, they will give, here's what went well, here's where you struggled, and here's overall information, as well as here's an idea for a follow-up prompt. Oh, I know why it's just showing this, because this is actually part of a group that I already excavated from last year. This is the piece that I really appreciate about Flint, is that it takes the overall experience of the students and gives you these strengths, areas of improvement, and follow-up. And it hyperlinks its feedback based on multiple students' information. So for me, when I used to teach English and I had this stack of essays and I would be reading through all of these essays, maybe I got to essay number 5 and I was like, you know what? They are not understanding personification or whatever it is. They're not understanding this at all. And now I'm kind of pseudo filtering for that bit of information so that I can pull out some mentor texts, whether it's really good examples of personification or it's really bad examples of personification, to be able to take back into the classroom and say, okay, so now let's revisit this because either I didn't teach it well enough or something's happening where this is not gelling the way I want it to. So they're saying the kids really understand identifying several parts of the machine. Fantastic. If I click on that bit, again, I think because this is an older tutor, it's not behaving the same way that I expected it to. But these elements will pop up with specific examples from the kids to show in their words how they were able to discuss a wide range of applications for 3D printing, whatever. However, some kids struggle to provide detailed explanations of the parts and their functions. So now I can look at which kids, and I can either have direct intervention with those students, or if it's prevalent enough, I can have a whole class discussion about it. Or a deeper exploration into the types of materials used and the specific limitations, which is totally to be expected because in my class, 3D printing is one element of a semester-long class. And so I don't go into the different types of materials you can use in 3D printing because we have 3D printers that run PLA. Can it use other stuff? Sure, it can, but that would just, it would be an entire year-long class just on 3D printing if I was able to cover that level of detail. But if I wanted to create a follow-up tutor based on where they were lacking, then I could, in fact, jump right into create a follow-up tutor. And now it pre-slugs these tutoring objectives based on that information. And now I can continue this conversation with them. Okay. If you, last 2 things. If you are the kind of person that likes to be inspired, before you try to start coming up with different tutors that may exist. If you click on this templates, I highly suggest going through and looking at some of the ideas that people have already created. And then you can, let's say, I want a physics lab partner. I click on view template. I can click on use this template. I decide where I want to put it. And then I can still come in here, choose tutor settings, and change whatever I want to change about it. So at least I have a starting point for something that I find might be useful. So it's kind of the true toe dip into the shallow end. I'm not sure what I would want, but you can also search these templates. So if I was looking, so apparently health class is not a thing. But if I do health, there's an anxiety chat support, nutrition expert, Ford Pinto detailed essay review. Not sure why that's related to health, but maybe for the car buffs, I don't know. AI and medicine debate, mental health support chat. So these are some starting places, right? We have tried, we've pushed the bot in Flint a little bit and pretended one of our favorite when I'm talking about the lid team examples is when we created a bot called Buzz Off Aldrin, where he was a crusty old man who knew a lot about space. And we were like, okay, let's see if this bot, how it engages with kids. And if kids bring up things like drugs, sex, all things bad like drugs, sex, and rock and roll. But if they bring up instances of abuse of any kind, what will happen? And with Flint, it redirects the kids immediately. So far, and I could be wrong, I know that they're looking at having a more robust flagging system. You do have access to all of the narratives that all of the kids write. So assuming that you are minimally browsing those, you will see in the feedback that there was something said of warning. Now that's different from School AI, which actually will warn you or give you a flag immediately. But rarely, because Flint is because you're prompting it so tightly, it almost always immediately turns around and says, like, if you're struggling, talk to an adult, please make sure that you get help, blah, 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 blah. And usually it will give some indication of that in the feedback area. So, questions? Yeah, Rachel.
Sorry, I know you can like virtually put the hand up, but it was just easier to. So with Flint AI, so like an example I had in my head originally would be like, you like telling the kids that their assignment would be to use Flint AI to create a custom meal plan based on their goals.
Mhm.
But that to me, after listening to this, so that sounds like an end product based idea, whereas instead of that, I might want to have them talk to the tutor to figure out, like, if you could help me with that next, like, what's a more appropriate use, that would be helpful. My brain can't get there.
Well, I don't think that your example is an inappropriate use of it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I think that you can still have students, because each of the students would be so individually customized,
Right.
then it would be, I think in your prompt, you're going to want to tell it to focus on, help students understand the value of having a balanced meal plan, or what the elements, like, you almost want to get into more minutia about how
Okay.
they get from where they are to that balanced meal plan. That
Okay.
And you can tell it, like, the end goal should be, like, by the end of the session, they should have a balanced meal plan for themselves.
Okay.
but make sure you hit on these elements as you go through, that they understand this and this and this. You can give it kind of multiple objectives. And if it's not doing enough of what you want, then put that into the rules. So like I was creating a chat bot earlier about to have students practice empathetic questioning as the first step in design thinking. And they are ultimately going to be creating a 3D model and building it for a classmate. But right now and right today, they need to practice empathetic questioning. And so their end goal is to create a list of 10 questions to ask their person. I initially told the bot, don't give them any of the questions, only focus on skills of a thoughtful question or skills of a thoughtful questioner. And then when I ran through it, I was like, this is hard. Like, this is an adult conversation. Like, there are adults who would have difficulty responding to the bot. And so I had to go back and change one of the rules to say, like, you can give some of the questions, like, because I don't want it to be that painful for the kids. I want them just to have practice. So playing around with it is kind of the fun part.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other? Amy, you look like you're deep in your own. Did you find your own? Yeah, you're like creating your own stuff over there. Cool.
I have a question, Liz, about sort of the content balance between the tutor, the AI tutor, and the students. I know that there was the setting, there were like the three, don't give them anything, give them something, and give them a lot. And I feel like most people will default to medium, is my guess. Like, that's what I thought. And maybe I shouldn't say it. Let's say I default to medium. I just found I created a tutor and I was just typing in like a word or two at a time. And it was just giving me like the tutor was doing all the work and it felt like the student was doing effectively nothing. Like, I made one about political polarization. I just wrote like Biden, Trump, and then it just like gave me everything else. And I guess I'm wondering about, is that more about like structuring the tutor differently? Is it like navigating the settings? Okay.
Yeah, it's navigating the settings. I think you are right in that most people, when they first start, keep the helpfulness level at medium, especially if you're talking about, well, I find the upper school teachers set it to no help and the lower school teachers set it to lots of help. So I think it's about your audience and the littler kids, like they're having a hard enough time with their keyboarding skills and getting how they feel about something out in the first place. And middle school is kind of sort of in the middle and it depends. But almost all of the, at least upper school examples that I've seen so far have been, don't give any helpfulness and also adjusting the rules. Don't, lots of like making multiple objectives. I think it's a little misleading that like, what is your objective? It's almost like that's your first objective. Okay, so now what are the almost executive functioning objectives under that you want the kids to be able to do in order to get to that final product or that final overall objective you want from them? And that's where you tinker with the helpfulness, the rules, and adding other sub-objectives.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, hoping that it's still actually